It's not your conditions. It's your decisions that determine the quality of your life. The fastest way to change your life is start making some real decisions. And I know it's hard initially. The more you make decisions, the more decision-making muscles you get. You know what I mean? It's like, well, some people have weak decision-making muscles. You ever been to a dinner with somebody or a group of people and there's always one person that's hanging on to the last moment, still can't decide. You see the waiter or waitress trying to be nice. You can see them kind of losing their patience.
My worst nightmare.
Right? They've got to make some decisions, right? I mean, and what stops people make decisions, you and I know, what is this fear? People are afraid of making the wrong decision, fear of not being perfect, fear of the consequences of their decisions. But let's chunk it up a little bit. What do people really want? We started out, we were all here created by something. I like God as the term. Some people like the universe. I'm not here to argue with that whatsoever, but we have to agree that something created us, and that something gave us choices. And choices are how we co-create basically our lives. It's not your conditions, it's your decisions that determine the quality of your life. I had pretty rough conditions growing up, to say the least, but I turned those into good conditions because of a mindset, because of certain psychology, because of certain decisions. And if you think about your life, most people are stressed because stress is usually measured by how much you feel you control events versus events control you. The more you feel events are controlling you, the more overwhelmed you feel, the more stress, the more anxiety, the more fear. And we live in a culture where mental health is at record lows in terms of quality and happiness and joy and fulfillment, and depression and anxiety are through the roof. And it's not because the world is so much more stressful. It's because of the way we process the world. We have more information coming at us than any time in history, obviously. We're drowning in information. We're starving for wisdom. But in order to go from being stressed to not, we understand that I think the single most important tool is decision making, because I think that's been the skill that took me from, barely surviving in a family that had tremendous pain and tremendous angst, was to be the nicest word to say, and no finances and 4 different fathers and a lot of physical and emotional abuse, to being able to serve literally hundreds of millions, billions of people. It's been decisions along the way. So if you look at your own life, yours, mine, anyone's life, anyone listening or watching, you have to be honest and say, I'm a creator. And if I don't like what I have, I've gotten here by the decisions that have created that. And now look, there's lots of little decisions we make all day long. And I know you talk about decisions. I'm writing a whole book on it right now. And most people, don't understand that most decisions are easy to change, right? I think you give an example. I give the example of Bezos as well as Amazon, and type 2 decisions are ones you can change very easily. Type 1 are significant. Like, they're going to be hard to change. Focusing on those big decisions is really important in life. But I think most people, they're afraid. And then the second thing is they think they don't have enough information, which is really just fear again. Because, I wrote an entire book where I interviewed 50 of the most incredible financial people in the world. All people who started with nothing and became billionaires, the best investors in history, the Ray Dalios, the Carl Icahns, the Warren Buffetts. And one of the things I learned over and over again from them is the smartest people usually are terrible investors. I said, how could that be?
Yeah.
And they said, because the smartest people want to know everything before they decide. And if you wait till you know everything, the opportunity's gone. And that's true not just in finance. I think that's true in life.
Yes.
Right? We wait till we have absolute certainty. There's no absolute certainty in life. The only absolute certainty is faith. It's like, how do you drive down a street with nothing but a yellow line separating you from crazies driving at you at 65 miles an hour, and every single day in every country in the world, in every city in the world, someone will cross that line and kill someone because they were drunk, because they fell asleep, because they're texting. And yet, how do you get out there every day without fear and do it? You use a gift that God gave us. It's called faith. It's not what you learned faith. I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking the capacity to see beyond the present moment and have a sense of certainty, right? And so why do you do it? Because the alternative is to live at home and do nothing. Go back to the COVID days and be trapped, right? We know what that did to people psychologically and emotionally, because they felt completely at the effect of things. So the fastest way to change your life is start making some real decisions. And I know it's hard initially. The other part is, it's just that the more you make decisions, the more decision-making muscles you get. You know what I mean? It's like, some people have weak decision-making muscles. You ever been to a dinner with somebody or a group of people and there's always one person that's hanging on to the last moment, still can't decide. You see the waiter or waitress trying to be nice. You can see them kind of losing their patience.
My worst nightmare.
Right? It's like, just freaking decide. Help this lady out, right? And they finally decide. Well, that's the habit of a lot of people. And they can't make a decision what to eat for dinner tonight. Yeah. How are they going to make a life decision, right? So the first step is to make maybe make some small ones that you can do and get some momentum. But the more decisions you make, the faster it gets. I think the whole idea that I have to make the right decision is the wrong way to look at it. My whole view has been not deciding is the worst decision, right? I need to consciously decide if I don't want to feel like things are affecting me. If I'm going to shape my world, I make a decision. And if I'm wrong, I'll find out quicker. I'll give you a real life example. I don't know if you remember General Schwarzkopf. I got to know him pretty well. Those who are younger probably don't even remember his name, but the first war that was done over, with Iran, I guess, or with Iraq rather, he ran the Allied forces, and he was a brilliant guy, and he was very powerful. He could talk to guys that were from the barrio, and he could talk to guys from Princeton incredibly well, and a really lovely human being. But I asked him what the most important skill was of a leader, and he said decision-making, which I agreed with, obviously. And I said, well, what do you think keeps people making decisions? And he said, I'll tell you a story. So he told me the story. I'll tell you the short version of it briefly. When he was a private, he represented a general. And the Pentagon had worked for almost, I think he said, more than a decade and a half analyzing this strategic decision they had to make. And there were people on both sides, and they argued it on both sides fully, so strongly that no one made a decision for over 10 years. And they knew they had to make the decision. If they didn't make it now, it could cost the country our security. It's a big decision. And so he, being the private, organized the team that had to read all these volumes of material so they could summarize it so the general would have the information. And he said, then the meeting got pushed up. And even with a group of 8 people, they could not gather all the information and fully summarize it. Meanwhile, the general was called overseas during this time when he should have been prepping. It wasn't his fault, but he had to deal with it. Flew back. The night before, they're loading up with all this information. He didn't get back till 10 o'clock at night. The meeting was 8 in the morning, right? Most important decision in the Pentagon's history was how it was framed. He said he came in the meeting. He said, give me your arguments. One person stood up for 20 minutes and gave this full-blown argument. This is the direction to go. All right, give me your argument. 20 minutes, full blast, their argument. He said, okay, do this. Then he all saluted and he walked out of the room. And he said, Schwarzkopf said, he was a private, not a general, right, at that time, right? He said, I don't know what the hell to do. He couldn't possibly know all this information. He couldn't possibly know what to do in this situation. And he was totally stressed by it. And so he worked up enough courage to knock on the general's door and said, General, permission to speak freely. He's at ease. He goes, General, I've worked on this for 4 weeks with 8 people. I said, you weren't even here last night. This is one of the most important decisions ever. I know you didn't have all the information. How could you possibly make that decision? He said, young man, because the decision needed to be made. And he said, and both sides are equally strong. So I picked the one I believe is right. If I'm wrong, we'll find out quicker. It won't take 10 years to find out. And if I'm right, we'll continue. If I'm wrong, we'll make a shift. And he said it just was outside of his world. It was so simple. And then he told me one other one that I thought was really good. He said he was leaving one time and he left him as a private in charge of things. He said, you're in charge. You make these decisions. You do these things. I said, General, I don't know. How do I know what to do? He said, Rule 13. He goes, Rule 13, sir. And he's starting to go out the door. He says, what's Rule 13? He couldn't figure out what Rule 13 was. When put in command, take charge. He goes, okay. And he goes, but how do I make the right decision? He goes, Rule 14. He goes, Rule 14, sir? What's Rule 14? Do what's right. Right? Yeah. And those simple approaches, I think, can guide us. And I really believe decision-making is the most important thing. So if you don't like your body, change it. If you like your relationship, change it. Maybe change you first. Otherwise, you'll trade people and have the same problems, right? You don't like your career, change it. But for things to get better, we got to get better. For things to change, my teacher, Jim Rohn, said, you got to change, right? But it all begins with a decision. So maybe start with small decisions or maybe attack a big one. Because when you do, you get momentum. And by the way, it's only a decision if you act on it immediately. And so I have a rule that's like, anytime I set a goal, anytime I make a decision, I make sure that within a few minutes of making it, I do something that commits me to follow through. Because here's the other problem. Have you ever done this? You ever made a decision and not followed through?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was maybe because I made a decision and I was uneasy about it afterwards, or there was some fear that crept in, or I didn't have a plan to execute it on it properly. Maybe one of those.
All those are the typical answers. So you're spot on in your experience. But the biggest reason is people think decision is a one-step process, and I found it's 3. Right? You can decide in the moment. The reason I make that commitment that when I'm in the moment, I do something that commits me when I leave that moment, you get in state, you get inspired enough, or you get pissed off enough, something moves you and say, not another day, not an hour, I'm changing this, right? But then when you leave that moment and you get caught up with some meeting or something with your family or something in your social media, or email, or whatever it is, gradually you're in a different state and then you don't follow through. And what you said is true. Something else comes up that you weren't prepared for, right? So a real decision, the word decision comes from incision in Latin, right? It means to cut off from. When you cut off any other possibility except what you committed to, you'll find the way. It's always tell people, if you want to take the island, burn your boats. As long as your brain has a way out, it'll go back. And it's amazing what you'll do when there's no option to go back. Most of my career has been because I had no net. I'm working with Serena Williams, and I got to turn her around right now. She can't get on. Her sister died. She can't get on the U.S. Open. She can't get on stand up. She can't get up to do anything. Everybody knows I'm working with her. I don't get her up, the whole thing's over. I get her up. I turn the president around. I do whatever I've got to do. No matter who it was, with no net, you find a way. So I think the biggest thing is once you decide, you want to go to the second step is commit. In fact, I hear women say this to me all the time. I know you have a large female audience. They'll say, men don't commit. And I said, has he even decided? Because there are different steps. Women jump to commitment very quickly. Men, not as quickly, right? And so deciding is like a war sometimes. I got to figure it out. Okay, I've decided. But then commitment, if I ask your audience to ask them, what's the difference? Let me ask you, what's the difference between deciding and committing to you?
I feel like decide is I know which direction I want to go in. Commitment is I want to stay in that direction for a long period of time.
Yes. You just added it with exactly what it is. A commitment takes it into the future. Decision is the moment, and that moment can change, which is why so many people make a decision legitimately and don't follow through. That's why you need to take action immediately that commits you to follow through, meaning book the meeting, enroll in the class, call the person and set it up. Organize so you can have that conversation you haven't wanted to have, and put it on the calendar so that there's momentum going out of it. But then deciding is really rough. Committing is not that rough. It's just creating enough compelling reasons to follow through, even though it might be tough right now. But there's a third step. And after you decide and commit, there's resolve. Resolve is whatever you did in that moment, it's done.
Right.
I know Jim Rohn had told me one time that he was speaking about resolve to this audience of young people. I think it was like a 9-year-old girl. He said, who's got a definition of resolve? And this young girl stood up and she said, I think it's promising yourself you will never give up.
Great.
That was a beautiful example. When you resolve, you're at peace. Deciding's like a war, right? Committing requires energy and taking to the future, as you described. And then resolve, it's amazing. It's like, it's done. It's done in me. It may not be done in the world, but it's done in me now. I'll find the way or I'll make the way. Yeah. And there's no uncertainty. There's no fear. There's no anxiety. When you get to that psychological, emotional place, that's the place in which you get results. If you look at an athlete, athletes are perfect examples of this. I'm sure you've seen a time where you watch an athlete walk up to shoot a free throw, or let's say a kicker in football, and you think, it's going to miss it.
Yeah.
And then they do. How did you know they're going to miss it?
Yeah, physiology, where their head was, where their eyes were.
Yes. You could see in their state a lack of certainty. When you see somebody like LeBron take the ball to go straight in and go over the top of somebody's head and put it through, he didn't just decide, he didn't just commit, he has resolved that every ounce of his being.
That's where the ball is going.
That's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, just to summarize, I think there isn't a more important skill than decision making. And if you're not good at it, all you got to do is start making some decisions. My question would be, instead of just listening to us today, if nothing else came out of this, what's one little decision you could make that would increase the quality of your life that honestly you should make? Maybe you've been putting it off because it's inconvenient, you've got lots of other stressful things in your life, or you're not really comfortable. But if you're really committed and you follow through, you decided, committed, and followed through, right, resolved, where would you be a year from now? What would your life be like? And I would take a little decision, and what action would you take today? Make that decision now. And then if you're bold, what's a big decision? What's a tough decision? What's a decision you've been putting off, or and you got it's right? It might be about a relationship. It might be about how you're dealing with your kids. It might be around your career or your business or your finances. But that's how life gets better. That's how you start creating life as opposed to being a manager of circumstance. And I think when people are maintaining, when they're managing their circumstances, when they're surviving, they're miserable. Like, we are made to grow and we're made to give. When we grow, we have more to give. And so I think decision-making is the pathway, one of them certainly, to getting there.